All right, CNBC contributor Josh Brown on the halftime report made an impassioned statement to investors saying the market has no real direction and today's sell-off needs to be taken very seriously.
You could say whatever you want about earnings estimates being fine. That's because everything costs more. You have to spend more money than you had to 6 months for the same crap that you're buying. How do you not understand that? And this idea that, well, the consumer is still spending, they have no choice. They have no choice. So listen, this is not complex. We've been in a bear market since the spring when we broke below the 200-day moving average. We had the yield curve inversion right around the same time. It may not be a technical recession today for the consumer. They feel like it's a recession, and you see that everywhere you look. So I understand that unemployment, headline unemployment is good and people can find jobs, and that's great. But if their cost of living is rising in excess of what they're making at their job, for them, it feels like a recession.
Keith Fitz-Gerald, Fitz-Gerald Group Principal, Ron Insana, Schroeder Senior Advisor, CNBC contributor. Gentlemen, welcome. What do you say to that, Keith, that Josh Brown just said? It may not technically meet the parameters or the definitional cues of a recession. And the market may not meet the parameters of what is a bear market, but it feels that way. And I have to say, I agree with him. It feels that way.
Well, it's funny watching Josh. He is a smart guy, and I wanted to come out of my chair and go, Josh. He's right. If the Americans are feeling like their wallet's pinched, it doesn't matter one end of the penny to the other what the government says, what the inflation print is, what the latest report says, what Yellen says. Who knows what Powell's going to say next? What the average American knows and feels in their wallet is my breakfast costs 60% more than it did 12 months ago. My gasoline is more than doubled. I now have to worry about getting to work, putting a roof over my head, paying for my food. Where's my insurance? You name it, they got to worry about it. That's why the numbers are so bad. It's all about psychology, and Josh nailed it.
Ron?
Josh's performative elements notwithstanding, I don't fundamentally disagree with his perspective, except I would not say that we are yet in a recession, technical or real. I think that, the markers for recession, inflation notwithstanding, are a meaningful jump in unemployment and a contraction in GDP. So yes and no. I mean, it absolutely feels bad.
But we did have a contraction in GDP in the first quarter.
Yeah, and in a weird way, that was a technical contraction.
I agree. So,
that was not. You can't have a recession when you're hitting new lows in unemployment. That's just not consistent with the definition, the actual definition of recession. What I fear is that the Fed is going to pound this nail until we actually go into a recession. It may be a deeper one than we're expecting. The yield curve just suggested is flattening. The stock market's falling. Certain commodity prices like lumber have plunged. So we are getting leading indicators that a recession may well be in the cards. And I think that's what the worry is. The problem for consumers is not a weak economy. It is rising prices. And so in that sense, it's an inflationary problem that's going to be solved, sadly, I think, with a recession.
Keith, if I am an investor who has held on, am diversified, I've got my money in a plan that I felt comfortable with. Are we in a bear market? Should I be considering selling, or have I missed that opportunity to take capital off the table, which is probably what I should have done on January 4th of this year?
Well, hindsight is 20/20. That's what they say. And the other saying that comes to mind is no good deed goes unpunished, right? I mean, if you look at history, I think the thing you need to ask yourself is how much time do I have in front of me, not where has this market been? Because one thing we do know, and history makes abundantly clear, Tyler, is that this stuff, as bad as it's going to get, eventually passes. So what I like to do is, when I'm in doubt, I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to look for the very best companies I can find. I think you're probably behind the 8 ball if you want to sell now, unless you've got something you absolutely have to generate the capital for. Otherwise, I'd play offense. I'd be looking at where we're going to be in 3 and 5 years from now. That's hard to imagine. It's tough. It's scary. This feels bad. But the psychology is you play to win. You don't play not to lose.
Ron, let's go back to the Fed's policy mistake here. I mean, is there anyone who still thinks the bigger mistake would be not tightening enough right now? Because this is, what we learned this morning is pretty bad. The consumer sentiment report is terrible. It's at a record low. This is like a 75-year-old series. Real wages are down. Real spending is down. consumer sentiment and expectations are down. I mean, it's hard to see why the Fed tightening would make this worse. Instead of, it could have potentially headed it off and helped it not get this bad in the first place.
Well, Kelly, and you and I have gone around on this a couple times. I mean, it's like, I don't know that raising interest rates would solve any of the underlying issues that caused inflation in the first place. And I'm not going to back away from that perspective. I've been wrong on where inflation is going. Look, the Fed could raise rates 100 basis points at every future meeting, and it's still not going to get you more semiconductors. It's still not going to get you more labor. It's still not going to get you more cars or more homes. In fact, quite the opposite will happen. So, look, they're going to engage ultimately in either a Volcker or Vietnam-style strategy where you destroy the village to save it. And I don't know what the administration or the federal government could do other than create some sort of Marshall Plan to boost supplies of materials and finished goods that are in short supply. And then that's not a near-term fix. So, as one of my colleagues once said, you know, if all you've got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so the Fed's going to keep hitting the nail until it appears to work.
Yeah, I guess, and Keith, maybe you can weigh in on this as well, but the fact that we, let's just call it what it is, overstimulated in response to the pandemic is why we have these problems in every part of the economy and not just in energy right now.
Well, I think Ron's right on it, and I think he's underemphasizing the significance of his point. The Fed can raise rates until the cows come home, and it will do nothing to address the underlying fundamental problem. We've got to get money out of the system. This is not being caused by too little money. It's being caused by too much money. We've got to get people back to work. Maybe there's a modern version of CCC that can be formed and go immediately into our infrastructure, stuff that is going to improve supply chain logistics. They've already begun working on, and then finally, they can immediately reverse things. Politics aside, policies aside, transformation aside, they can get back to American energy production. It would at least make a dent in the gasoline, and that would go directly to American consumers. So I think Ron's point is really interesting. The Fed has got a policy problem. It's not got a rates problem. It's not got a risk problem. They can't back away from this because that's going to be tantamount to admitting they've made two huge errors in a row, transitory, and now what are they going to do about it? And they're behind the eight ball.
And on that note,
I wish there were more time, Kelly. There's so many points to make on this, and I partly agree with Keith. But the problem is, we don't need a back to work policy. We have more open jobs than we have available workers. We need more people. And again, the Fed can't print people, right? That's a real issue. So that's, you know, a labor market issue. The Fed can't make computer chips.
They printed too many jobs.
You mean 3D printers can't make people? God,
that's where Elon Musk is going to rescue us with his bots. Yeah.
All right, guys, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Keith Fitz-Gerald, Ron, what was that statistic?